Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
I think the offense is way ahead of the defense. We didn't do a very good job of tackling today. Anywhere on defense, we got a lot of work to do on that. Had a lot of mental errors. We played immature as a defense. We got a lot of young players, especially on defense, and they need to grow up and they need to mature. I don't think defensively as a whole, we played very well at all. You know, we didn't have the eye of the tiger that we need to be a good defensive team, and that's all 11 of them.
Nick Saban not exactly doing jumping jacks with what he saw from his defense in scrimmage number one. Good evening, everybody, and welcome in to Tider Insider TV, presented by Buffalo Rock. Tonight, Rodney, again, Diet Pepsi. We're going diet because I'm, you know, at football 15 I put on every year, I'm going to try to avoid. Alongside Rodney Orr, I am Gary Harris, and we've got you covered, Rodney, and let's begin with the scrimmage from this past Saturday. Now, per normal policy, cameras were not allowed into the scrimmage. The only images released were still pictures from the university's media relations department. You see here quarterback Greg McElroy. He had an outstanding performance, 26 of 33 for 360 yards and 6 touchdowns. Julio Jones led the receivers, 7 catches for 99 yards and a couple of TDs. Mark Ingram had some good yards receiving as well. He caught 75 yards worth of receptions and a touchdown. Also had another score on the ground. Defensively, though, not much to talk about. Mark Barron was atop the statistics with 5 tackles and a pass breakup. But as you heard the coach say, the defensive highlights were few and far between. So, Rodney, that is where we will begin. You know, you've picked Alabama to go 12-0. I picked them to go to 11-1 in the regular season. Most everybody that follows college football is picking them to have an opportunity to get back to Atlanta and then possibly the national championship game. But now reality is starting to set in. And the reality is that they lost 9 starters from a year ago. And even though there's some talented guys out there, you're talking about losing football players who played a lot of snaps on the defensive front, linebacker, and obviously now in the secondary where there are major concerns. Right now, based on the numbers that we saw from this past scrimmage, and I know you can't read too much into that, but all of a sudden, is the defense a bigger concern than what we thought it was?
Well, first of all, you know, we've said all along, Gary, that you know, you're replacing a lot of great players. You're replacing a lot of experience, a lot of starters. So this really isn't that much of a surprise, to be quite honest with you. You know, when you look at the scrimmage, certainly there's some concern coming from that. But you also have to consider that the defense wasn't doing everything that they would normally do. In other words, it was somewhat scaled down in terms of what they were doing, blitzing, stunning, what have you. So their entire package certainly was not thrown at the offense. So yeah, but there is a lot of concern, Gary, when you look at the secondary, when you look at, you know, all the inexperience back there. They lost their top 3 corners. They lost the safety in Woodall, and you want to use this as an opportunity to start developing guys. They've developed them in the spring and continue to develop them, prepare them for the season. You have a lot of injuries back there.
You know, we talk about that secondary, especially on the corner last year with Arenas and Jackson. Those were 2 lockdown guys. I mean, you could leave them out there on the island. Woodson had played a lot of football for you at safety. Now you're replacing those guys, and there have been nagging injuries. Menzies missing time right now. Milliner's missing time. Obviously, B.J. Scott and Dre Kirkpatrick seem like they're the heir apparents to the cornerback position, but there's not much continuity now because there's been some illness and some nagging injuries to guys who really need to be getting reps right now.
Yeah, and you also lost Marquise Johnson, who led the nation in pass breakups last year. And, you know, again, that's a lot of players that you lose from a very complicated, complex defense, Gary, that takes time for guys to learn. That's why, you know, when Menzies losing reps and other guys, whoever it might be, D. Milliner and others, you know, certainly that doesn't bode well at this time of year.
Well, you know, when there's darkness, one thing's for certain, the dawn will always follow. And the flip side of this scenario is the bright side, the offense. And granted now, this scrimmage was skewed because of how many times they threw the ball, but still, with guys like Julio Jones and Greg McElroy and Michael Williams and Mark Ingram and Trent Richardson and Darius Hanks and Preston Dial and, you know, new stars like Eddie Lacy. There's Marquise Mays. You got 3 offensive linemen back, and the 2 young guys that are stepping in there are really big physical specimens. This side of the ball seems like it has a chance to be really spectacular.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's any question about that with the running game. And, you know, that's the way it's always going to be under Nick Saban, a strong physical running game, good up front. And, you know, you mentioned the 2 young guys, Chance Warmack at left guard, DJ Fluker at right tackle. And, all the returning guys, Barrett Jones up front, as well as Vallejos and James Carpenter. So certainly they've got the makings of a very outstanding offense.
And we know this, the defense will get better. It'll improve as the season goes along, as those guys get more experience. But early on, the offense might have to carry this football team. Let's bring you an update on the medical report. DJ Floker missed last night with an illness, didn't feel well, but he was back out there today, indoor in full pads. But Menzie and Milliner, a couple of those DBs, Blake Sims, who's played on both sides of the ball all day today with nagging injuries, they were not practicing today. Now, following Monday's practice, the leaders on the team, Greg McElroy, linebacker Dante Hightower, tight end Preston Dial, and defensive lineman Marcel Darius called a players-only meeting. They talked about continuing to improve, turning the corner, and committing to the team and competing every snap, playing as hard as you can regardless of the situation. Now, Rodney, Nick Saban says those things all the time, but does it mean more when it comes from the players themselves?
Yeah, I think so sometimes, and I think in this case, certainly, Greg McElroy talked about the catching it early and talking to the guys and kind of rallying the troops, so to speak, early before it gets carried into the season. And, again, people kind of get alarmed at these types of things, but, talking to the players, they do this on a regular basis. It's not something that's, out of the ordinary, especially at this time of year.
Yeah, one thing I want to mention real quickly before we move on to Glenn Coffey, and that is continuity amongst the coaching staff, amongst the players. Everybody's been around 3 or 4 years now. They know what to expect. Players know what to expect from one another. Coaches know what to expect from each other. You can't, I think, talk about that enough. Even with the inexperience on defense, this is a team that is all on the same page.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. And, we've talked about the defense and losing all those guys. But, Gary, there are a lot of guys that are back that have played considerable amount of time. You're talking about Marcel Darius, Josh Chapman, Dante Hightower certainly, and others. Mark Barron, obviously a third-team All-American last year. So they have a great nucleus. It's just a matter of time.
All right, now, I kind of gave it away. Shifting gears to the NFL, and this one really came as a shocker to me. Former Crimson Tide standout Glenn Coffey has retired from the San Francisco 49ers after one season in the NFL. And you know what? It wasn't because he wasn't going to get to play. He was a solid number 2 behind Frank Gore. He had a decent rookie campaign. But he told Gentry Estes of Mobile Register that he felt like God was taking him in a different direction. Coffey says it was a mistake for him to leave college early in the first place, and added he's planning on returning to Tuscaloosa to finish up his degree. Rodney, let me say this before I let you chime in. So many football players work hard to get to the NFL and don't even get the opportunity. This is a guy with a bright future in front of him, but you have to respect the fact that he's going with his heart. And it'd be easy to stay in the NFL, take that money, and still try to spread the message of God, but he felt led to do this, and I think you have to admire him.
Well, be honest with you, Gary, when you feel that way, when you have that in your heart, and you get that call, there's nothing like it. And I mean, there's something that certainly Glenn Coffey has, turned his life over to the Lord, as we know, a couple of years ago, and that's been his commitment, and I think that's a great thing for him.
All right, we'll see what happens in the future, but right now, Glenn Coffey giving up football for a potential ministry. I think he might be headed in that direction. Well, still to come on TITV, Alabama landed a commitment last week from a quarterback, and could another commitment be on the horizon? Rodney will have that this week in his recruiting update. Also ahead, Bama signee Deion Ballou says he'll have to delay his enrollment at Alabama, find out where he'll be playing football this coming season. Also, we'll be getting to your phone calls and answering your emails, 205-348-WVUA, that's 348-9882, or you can email us, TITV at WVUATV.com. Stay with us, we'll be right back. When you're looking for a place for lunch or dinner, you don't have a lot of time, but you still want to be able to be comfortable, relax, and get great food in a hurry, Newk's 205 University Boulevard East is your place, right up from the UA campus. In fact, with students returning, Newk's has been very, very busy, but that's the great thing. Notice the word express. Even if it's crowded, they'll still get you in, they'll get you out. It's one of the best places to eat in Tuscaloosa. That's why I eat there all the time. Oven-toasted sandwiches, California-style pizzas, hand-tossed salads, all with fresh ingredients. They've got a terrific dessert menu featuring cakes, brownies, and Rice Krispie treats, a beer and wine menu as well, and they'll take care of your catering, 758-2455. Find out what literally thousands of people in Tuscaloosa have already discovered. Newk's Express Cafe, right up from the UA campus, is a terrific place to eat, open 7 days a week. Now back to football. Junior running back Jeremy Griffin has received a medical hardship because of the knee injury that he suffered last year. The 6'2", 232-pound running back from Batesville, Mississippi, Missed the 2009 season after tearing his ACL during last year's fall camp. He played in a couple games as a redshirt freshman in 2008, rushing for 29 yards on 6 carries. He also had 1 reception for 9 yards. There is a chance, according to Coach Saban, that he may become a student coach at the University of Alabama. And University of Alabama signee Dion Ballou has enrolled at Northeast Mississippi Community College. One of his former coaches at Dessler High School says that Ballou plans to spend a year and a half in Mississippi before enrolling at the capstone for the spring 2012 semester. Well, coming up, Rodney rejoins me for his weekly recruiting roundup. And also, we'll be getting to your phone calls and emails. The information, again, to get in touch with us there on your screen. You're watching the show that takes you inside the Tide, the one, the only Tider Insider TV.